They dragged him from the tower before dawn, the iron wheels of the cart grinding against frozen cobblestones. Shackled and hunched, Guy Fawkes could barely lift his head. The crowd gathered thick as mist, faces pale in the weak light of January. All London had come to see a man die. He had been tortured for days in the Tower of London, stretched on the rack until his joints tore, his bones cracked, and his voice broke into hoarse silence. The king's men wanted names. Every conspirator, every whisper, every hidden oath sworn in shadow. They got them. But they wanted more. They wanted a spectacle. England was still trembling from the shock of treason. It was only weeks since the discovery of the Gunpowder Plot, a plan to blow up Parliament, slaughter the king, and plunge the realm into chaos. And at the center of it all was Fawkes, the man found guarding the barrels beneath Westminster Hall. Now, the crown demanded vengeance. His death would not be swift. It would be public, deliberate, and unforgettable. A warning written in blood. As the cart rattled through the streets, the crowd jeered and threw filth. Children shouted, "Traitor!" while old men crossed themselves, terrified of divine wrath. Fawkes said nothing. The ropes had burned his wrists raw. His fingernails were gone. His body trembled, but his gaze remained eerily calm. When they reached Old Palace Yard, the air was thick with smoke and the smell of wet earth. The scaffold stood high against the grey sky, draped with black cloth. The executioners waited beside it, their blades already stained from the morning's work. 3 of Fawkes's fellow conspirators had gone before him. The ground still shone slick with their blood. The first had been hanged until near death, then cut down, screaming as his belly was opened. The crowd had roared when the executioner held up his heart. Another had fainted halfway through his disembowelment. The axe finished what his courage could not endure. By the time Guy Fawkes stepped forward, the people were hungry for the finale. His steps were unsteady. Torture had broken his body, but not his will. His leg had been shattered. Every movement sent a jolt of pain up his spine. The hangman tied his hands behind his back. The rope creaked as it tightened around his neck. The sheriff read aloud his sentence, hanged, drawn and quartered, as befitted traitors to the crown. The words rolled through the air like thunder. May God have mercy on your soul. But Fawkes had his own plans. He looked down from the scaffold, meeting the eyes of the jeering mob one last time. A hush fell over the square. Then, without hesitation, he jumped. The trapdoor fell open. The rope snapped taut. There was a sudden crack, a flash of motion, and silence. His neck broke instantly. The crowd gasped in shock. He had cheated them of their show. For a moment, even the hangman hesitated. But orders were orders. They cut his limp body down and dragged it to the block. The executioner, furious, slashed him open with savage speed. The sound was wet and terrible. Steam hissed from the wound, mixing with the cold morning air. The crowd recoiled, and then leaned closer, morbid curiosity overriding horror. The executioner reached into the cavity, tore out the heart, and held it aloft for all to see. "This is the heart of a traitor," he bellowed. The crowd roared in approval. The axe came next. With 3 brutal strokes, Fawkes's head was severed. Blood soaked the boards beneath the block. The executioner wiped his blade on the traitor's clothes, then ordered the remains to be quartered. His limbs were hacked apart, boiled in tar, and sent to the city gates as grim trophies of royal justice. His head was mounted on a spike above Westminster Bridge, where it would rot in the wind and rain. Passers-by looked up in terror and awe. The man who had almost destroyed Parliament now hung as a warning to every rebel who dared dream of fire, but his death did not kill his legend. In death, Fawkes became something more than a traitor. His story spread across taverns and marketplaces, whispered by men who wondered if perhaps, just perhaps, he had been right to rebel. Every November, bonfires were lit in his name. Children tossed effigies of his body into the flames. Some celebrated his failure, others his courage. The fire became both condemnation and tribute, a symbol of defiance that no execution could extinguish. Even centuries later, the echoes of that morning still linger. The cold wind over the scaffold, the rope swinging in silence, the leap that denied his captors their pleasure. Guy Fawkes' final act was not submission, it was rebellion to the very end. His death reminds us that every tyrant craves obedience, but even the broken can choose defiance. When the noose tightens, when all hope is gone, courage can still find a way to strike back. So the next time you see a spark leap from a bonfire, remember the man who tried to set a kingdom ablaze. Guy Fawkes died in agony, but his flame never truly went out. It flickers still in every whispered tale of resistance, every quiet act of rebellion against power. How far would you go for your beliefs? Would you face the rope for your cause, or watch in silence as others burn? If you thought this was horrifying, wait until you hear about the woman Turk beheaded by sword, the final hour of Mary, Queen of Scots, Zachra, Fotheringhay, 1587. A queen whose execution turned a nation's loyalty into horror and her blood into legend.